I have a few main problems with the science-based lifting approach. Problem number one is most of these studies are very underpowered. Look, exercise is a hard thing to study anyway. It's just difficult to get a lot of people to train a certain way for a long period of time. So what you end up usually happening is, you have like 12 college kids that sign up for a study because they're going to get paid $50 and they train for 8 weeks. So realistically, if I don't get in a car crash here, that is just extremely underpowered. Studies in other major fields of science, that's just not even a large enough sample size to even consider being any kind of valid study. The second reason that I'm not a huge fan of trying to base everything off of science is the duration of the studies. Is like, what, 1 semester? It's just not very long. And so we're trying to say, hey, these guys training for 8 weeks is a good reflection of what you should do for the next 6 months, year, 6 years. It's just, it's not a very good comparison. The third reason is that studies are not real life. In a study, what you're trying to do is control all the other variables and change one thing to see what happens. The problem is, in real life, why would you want to do that? If I thought adding more chest volume and taking creatine would give you better gains, I would do both. I wouldn't just do one and then meticulously track the muscle growth. I mean, how are you going to track the muscle growth anyway? It's going to be so slow. You would do both. You would do both. You want to maximize your gains. So studies versus real life, it's just not exactly the same thing. The next reason is simply that studies are incapable of giving individuals recommendations. When you watch videos from Jeff Nippard or Milo Wolf or Mike Israetel or a lot of these science communicators, they give you these wild volume recommendations. Like, I keep hearing the 30 number come up. Now it used to be 10 to 20. Now I keep hearing 30. That's how you can tell these guys aren't coaches. Can you imagine a coach saying something like this? Hey, well, the last 40 clients I trained did pretty well on an average of like 15 sets a week. So we're just going to start you on 15 sets a week. What? No, that's how you know they're not coaches. A coach would be like, okay, tell you what, why don't we start with a very reasonable baseline, a very reasonable approach, and just see how you respond. And we'll make tweaks as we go. That's what a coach would do. So, but a study can't do that for you. It's incapable of doing it. A study is going to take a statistical analysis of many different individuals and give you something like a statistical average. And that's where you get these like 10 to 20, but you don't know if you're the 20 and you don't know if you're the 10 and you don't know if you're less. There's a podcast by 3DMJ where they had two of their coaches on there, Eric Helms and Jeff Alberts, both amazing athletes. Both I think they're both WNBF pro card holders. Amazing. Jeff Alberts is still competing on a national level in national bodybuilding in his 50s. I've been watching Jeff Alberts videos for probably 15 years. That guy, maybe 12, but that guy, I mean, I've literally watched that man do 4 sets per muscle group per week, once a week. And he's bigger than you and me. It's amazing, right? And then I've watched Eric Helms. Eric Helms is really enjoyable to listen to, very knowledgeable guy, very charismatic. Recently won his pro card. He literally does sometimes 30, 35 sets for upper body muscles. It's insane. And guess what? Eric Helms actually trained with Jeff one time and lost muscle mass. That's how poor of a training response he was getting from that level of volume. My point here is that you have two very high level natural bodybuilders. Eric Helms even has a PhD in the field. And their approach to training is completely different. The individual needs and response to training can be very, very different. A scientific study, because you didn't participate in the study, can't tell you what your volume needs are. You're Jeff Alberts or you're Eric Helms? No idea. And so when scientists just take these not random, but they take the results from a study and then say, hey, everyone watching the video should do that much volume. That's how you can tell they're not coaches. So you cannot get an individual recommendation from a study and then apply it. You can get maybe a general overarching principle, but you can't get an individual recommendation. Another problem I have is there's lots of things that we've come out with in exercise science that science shows, but we already knew that, and then it goes back on itself, right? So here's a good example. The lengthened partials. When everything was a lengthened partial, right? Dr. Milo Wolf is like, I am Dr. Milo Wolf, and I only do exclusively lengthened partials. But, then Jeff Nipper came out with his own study that showed that, full range of motion did just fine. And the lengthened partials didn't do any better. So you could do your lengthened partials. It seems to be fine, but it's not doing anything more than if you just did normal ass training. And okay, cool. Good to know that I don't have to lock out an overhead tricep extension, I guess, to get the same amount of growth, but I probably already knew that, They came out with a study when they were like, hey, look, like training closer to failure produced more muscle growth, or training to failure produced more muscle growth. Crazy. I can go back and watch Pumping Iron, and Arnold tells me that, like 50 years ago. Look, you know what I'm saying? The bros were like, yeah, once a week frequency is killing it. And then the science quacks were like, no, it's not. And then it was fine. When they came back and they did a study with volume equated, they're like, yeah, actually once a week frequency is fine. Yeah, we knew that. Like we already knew that. I'm not saying there's not good things that we've learned and we're learning and it's good. And I appreciate the work that's being done, but we're acting like it's the holy grail of all truth and knowledge, and that it's the best thing we have to make training decisions. And the truth is, we have over a century of good training experience that we could pull from. We don't, I dare say, we don't need to run to papers to figure out how to train. We have the experience. We have coaches. We have seasoned athletes in the field that have been down in the trenches actually doing it. And, a lot of the stuff we kind of already knew. I think one of my final reasons for why I have kind of a bone to pick with the science-based community is the attitude about it. The attitude is something like, hey, I'm doctor and I have a PhD in exercise science, so you need to listen to me. I'm not saying the education is worthless, and I'm not saying the information and the expertise they have is doesn't matter. But what I am saying is this: can you get a PhD in exercise science without exercise, without actually lifting weights? Yeah, you can. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that most of the PhD candidates in exercise science programs across the country are not even intermediate level lifters. So you can learn a lot about a subject without actually doing it. It'd be kind of like getting like an NBA science degree without ever playing basketball, and then saying everybody needs to listen to you because you have a degree in basketball because you studied it. Well, you studied it, but you didn't actually do it, right? So it's something like that. It's probably not quite that extreme of an example, but you get my point, right? I would much rather listen to someone with 20, 30 years of lifting, competing, and coaching experience than I would somebody with an exercise science degree. Why? Because the practical knowledge and the real world knowledge and the real world application is actually valuable. You have actually competed in the endeavor. You have actually done it, not just studied it. And so the attitude that, hey, everyone needs to bow down and listen to me. I'm the oracle of truth. I'm the arbiter. I'm the arbiter of all truth and knowledge. And I'm the wisdom. I'm the priest of this scientific religion. is just not, I'm just not buying it, dude. Like they're not coaches. Sometimes they're not even strong. So those are my big gripes with the science-based community. Look, practical experience in lifting weights is always going to be more relevant.